Did you ever hear of a school that helps people become angrier, more materialistic, more stingy, more arrogant, bigger liars? Well, you probably didn't. And if you did, they're probably upset that you heard about it. Question is, how come people are naturally angry, stingy, liars, and so on and so forth? The lowlife traits that we've talked about so much. But yet if you ask a person, would you say I'm sorry to somebody that's insulting you? Would you tell people that you're excited about serving God even more? The reality is, those things are not natural to us. Why? Why is the lowlife trait a natural trait, but the elevated, more refined trait, not so natural? In fact, unnatural. This and much more is what we're going to learn today from the Chazon Ish in this Jewish ideology series that is continuing to transform lives, including the one that's speaking to you. Enjoy, share, learn and apply, and most importantly, remember, be holy.
B'Shem HaShem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We are back, Baruch Hashem, after a relatively long break for Pesach, for Passover. Baruch Hashem, it was a fantastic holiday. I hope you guys enjoyed the holiday as much as we did, or even at least as half as much as we did. Good times with the family, get a little bit of time to learn some Torah, Baruch Hashem. Get some time to really get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I know that many times when people are first starting to become religious and get closer to Hashem, sometimes the holidays, when they're long, it seems like a burden. But I can promise you that the solution to that is always the same solution that I always tell everyone, which is if you celebrate the holidays and Shabbat and the rest of Judaism like you're supposed to, it's not only not a burden, it actually becomes the biggest pleasure of your life. And that means that you'll have to involve a lot of Torah. If you learn Torah during the holidays, you learn Torah during Shabbat, you get closer to Hashem, you'll see that the holidays become something that you look forward to. But when a person uses the holidays like people use vacations, where they simply, they work a lot, and then in one day they look forward for that time that they have a break from work, and you treat the Jewish holidays and Shabbat that way, unfortunately, you're never going to get to enjoy the holidays, because the holidays are not a break. The holidays are opportunities. So, BeEzrat Hashem, this is part of the things that we need to learn as part of the Jewish ideology, that we're going to continue tonight. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Sarah Bat Levana, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and also for the Atzlacha Rabbah and the success of all of the righteous Noahides and the Jews that continue to watch us, continue to share the knowledge, share the lectures everywhere, support in any way that they can, whether it be financially or volunteering, whatever way they're doing it. Baruch Hashem, we appreciate it all. So with that being said, there's so much to say, there's so much to do. BeEzrat Hashem, we're going to try to cover it tonight. In the last couple of shiurim of this particular series, the Chazon Ish took us on a journey to really identify the lowlives within us as well as among us. The expression lowlife obviously has a negative connotation by most people. Simply nobody wants to be a lowlife. But generally speaking, people define lowlives based on their perspective, meaning that they see somebody that is doing some harm to them, somebody cut them off in traffic, somebody took their parking spot, somebody took their promotion at work, somebody is not being nice to them, whatever it is, they say, oh yeah, that guy's a lowlife, that woman's a lowlife. And the truth is, one of the things that we've learned from the Chazon Ish is that being a lowlife actually doesn't have much to do with just your perspective, because sometimes a person can call somebody else a lowlife while they themselves are actually being the lowlife. And one of the things that we've learned in the last two segments of this particular part is that what we don't want to be a lowlife, we don't want to be among lowlives. And in fact, one of the ways to avoid that is by identifying what is a lowlife.
The next part that we're going to discuss tonight is the last segment of the low life aspect that we need to remove within ourselves, within society, within our world, our family, our friends, whatever it is. But also, what's the cure? What is the cure to low lives? We've discussed it to a certain point, but we're going to give some examples. How does a former low life look like today? Meaning, if a person took the cure that the Chazon Ish is prescribing for the low life, what would he look like today? And BeEzrat HaShem, this is one of the things that is supposed to be inspiring to those among us that are really looking to grow. If a person already thinks that they're perfectly fine, if a person thinks that there's no reason for them to change, there's no reason for them to do anything better than what they're doing, then they could simply shut down the lecture at this point and just go, watch some ducks cross the road and waste their lives elsewhere. Why? Because these types of lectures are not for the faint of heart, and they're also not for the people that think that they're perfect. These lectures are for people that are looking to grow. Now, sometimes the lectures are going to touch a nerve. They're going to touch certain things that perhaps hit home, that affect you, that annoy you, that perhaps even make you feel a little bit embarrassed. But that's the point. The point is to touch those nerves, to wake them up in order to make you realize this is what we're talking about, this is what needs to change. So the Chazon Ish has been telling us that one of the mistakes that people have about self-development is that they feel like if they hear a lot of bad things about something, then that in itself is going to change it. For example, if you hear that anger is like idolatry, anger makes you a bad person, anger makes God hate you, anger is horrible, and so on and so forth, you're right, it is all of that. But after knowing all of the things that the book of anger is going to tell you, which is an extraordinary book that I recommend to everybody, Remove Anger from Your Heart, by Rav Avram Tublotsky. It's an extraordinary book. It's not just a book I'm making up. Literally, this is one of the books that Gdolei Hador have discussed many, many times. If a person knows this entire book by heart, and he knows all of at least the parts that talk about why anger is horrible, that in itself is not going to cure you. Why will it not cure you? Because knowing that anger is bad is only half the battle. The goal of knowing that anger is bad, and anger brings a person to a life of Gehenna in this world and the next world, and the marriages break up, and the partnerships in business break up, and no one wants to do business with you, and nobody wants to be friends with you, and even your kids hate you, and you're arrogant, and you're this, and you're that. Everyone knows all of that is bad. You don't need this shiur to tell you what you already know. What the Chazon Ish has enlightened us with is to let us know that these bits of information that you're getting each time, reminding you about the negative aspects, the negative feelings, the negativity in general that's created by anger, by arrogance, by stinginess, by lack of cleanliness, by a person that has simply any type of bad trait. The whole point of those reminders is to, number one, remind you of what you already know, because that's certainly sometimes necessary, because sometimes people are so clueless, let's just say that, they're spiritually sleeping to such an extent that they don't even realize that the bad is bad. So sometimes you need to remind it. But the other more important part is to really give the person the desire to become better. Because once a person realizes that this is even worse than what I thought, that being angry, being stingy, being arrogant, being anything that is in essence something that people complain about, it's a negative trait. It's not just bad. It's not just ruining relationships with people, with people that you love, with people that you work with your creator, with yourself, with your life. It's not just bad for that, but it's actually even worse than you thought. In order to get you to a point to desire to want to be better. Because without that desire to want to be better, as Rabbi Yonah wrote about 700 years ago in Sha'arei Tshuva, all of the ethical teachings will amount to nothing if a person doesn't have the desire to change. So the first part is to know that it's not just bad, and your wife and your husband and your friends are not just complaining for no reason. It's not just that. It's even worse than what you thought. In order to make you realize that it's time to change, that you really want to change. Why? Because having this bad out of your life, it's like removing a tumor. It's like removing a cancer out of your life. It's like removing all of these trolls from my messages. It's like removing all of the pranksters and all the losers from your life. It's like removing all of that. Imagine the relief of having no lowlives in your life. Imagine the relief of having no more trolls, no more lefty liberals, no more any, people that are just tormenting you for absolutely no reason. Imagine no more free Palestine types of people. Imagine that. Imagine a world that exists like that. That imagination can become a reality. That imagination can become a reality by first identifying that lies and arrogance and stinginess and everything that I mentioned before and more is bad, but then a desire to change. The whole point of knowing that it's bad is in order to spark up a desire to change, a desire to be better. And that's in essence the goal of Jewish ideology, to teach you that you can be better. It's not just something that is possible, it's something that we must do. Now, lowlives are not just people that are bothering you or me or each other. Lowlife is not just simply a person that cuts you off in traffic. Lowlife is not something that is just relating to you. Meaning, being a lowlife is a state of being that is with or without this particular action. Meaning, whether he cut you off or he didn't, whether he yelled at you or he didn't, whether he shortchanged you or not, whether he stole from you or not, whether he yelled at you or not, whether that experience that happened to you or not did not make him a lowlife. He was that already. Meaning, the lowlife is a lowlife because he's a lowlife because of other things, not because of this action. What you saw is simply one of the symptoms and the outcomes of a person being a lowlife. And a person has to first and foremost identify the difference between what people think is a lowlife and what really is a lowlife. A lowlife is not just because of somebody that's bad to you. It's somebody that's in essence lacking a spiritual connection with the Creator, lacking an understanding that there is a Creator above them watching and monitoring every single thing that they're doing, with or without this experience that you had. Which means that low life can sometimes be us. That low life can sometimes be the way we behave. Hence the point of why we're having 3 lectures about just this particular topic. It's not just to talk about other losers that are in the world, because that we could have finished in 5 minutes. It's to identify that sometimes the lowlife can actually be us, even if we are trying not to be a lowlife. We don't want to be a lowlife. We never even knew it's even possible for us to be a lowlife. The last thing we ever thought was that we're even sharing the same world with the lowlives. And last but not least, that we didn't even acknowledge the fact that sometimes we're acting like it. So the Chazon Ish is now letting us know that this part is not something that you're going to learn in school. Why? He says, lowliness of the spirit is not something substantial and positive, but rather a lack and an emptiness, a lack of refinement of the soul. Here he's telling us that you don't actually need to do anything in order for the low life within us to come out. Now, what's the proof of this? The Gemara in Masechet Succah, page 52b, says that when the evil inclination comes to you, you have to take it to a Bet Midrash to go learn Torah. Why would you take the evil inclination to learn Torah? Because if you don't, it's going to impact you and it's going to turn you into an evil person. It's going to turn you into doing bad things. Now, why is my natural inclination to do bad things? Why do I even have an evil inclination? Why don't I just do good? Like most people think, oh, I'm a good person. You ask anybody out there, do you think you're a good person? You're not going to find many people that say no. And usually the ones that say, I don't think I'm a good person, usually they're a sociopath and most likely, they may even be murderers. But generally speaking, the average person out there thinks that they're a good person. But then when you start discussing the more specific details of what this person does on a day-to-day basis, how they wake up in the morning, how they operate at work, how they function, you realize, wait a minute, you're not really that good. Well, let's see. You wake up in the morning, first thing you do, you yell at your wife, or you yell at your husband, or you yell at your kids. Why? Because you woke up late, and somehow it's their fault. Then, you do whatever you need to do, you get ready, you want to eat something. Now, you're upset. Why? Because the food that you have doesn't taste apparently good enough for your palates on your tongue. So you blame the food, you blame the chef, you blame the ingredients, you blame everybody else except yourself. You go to work, and of course there's at least 2 or 3 people that you want to do something bad to, or at the very least say something bad to, on the way to work, even though you don't know them. You have no reason why they're driving the way that they are, why they're walking the way that they are, why they even look the way they are. But you have enough to say about each one of those people, and the longer the drive, the more words you have to say. By the time you got to work, you completely ignore the fact that you're late almost every day out of the week. You care less about the fact because all you care about is that your paycheck is on time. The fact that you're late is irrelevant. So even though you stole 15 minutes today and a half hour yesterday and an hour last week and 3 hours the week before, and you are pretending to work while you're working, you take a break when you're really supposed to be working, when you're on a break, in reality it's just a continuation of your day, and little do you even acknowledge that what you're doing is not working but rather stealing from your boss. But you don't take that into account because you figure this boss is rich. He has a company. He has many companies. He doesn't care if I work every single minute. He likes me. That's why he hired me. As if this boss has nothing to do with his life other than to find people that steal from him. And you figure that you're going to be at this job and you're going to warm up the chair for him. Perhaps once in a blue moon, produce something, do something, answer something. And as soon as somebody comes and requests something from you, because that's your job, immediately you get upset. Why do you get upset? Well, you forgot that that's your job, for people to ask for you to do something. Why are they bothering me? Well, if you don't want them to bother you, you can just find a different job. So now you are only looking forward to, as soon as you got to work, you're looking forward to lunch, even though technically lunch is for you to get energy enough to work the rest of the day. It's not for you to completely run away from the place you are. It's a time for you to get some energy, to get some food, get a break in order to go back to work. But you are looking forward to lunch already at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, which means that your mind is already at lunch. Again, another form of stealing from the people that are paying your bills. After you've returned from lunch, even though it's usually about 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes late, and if you add it up throughout the whole year, it's at least a week or 2 out of the year that you're stealing just from your lunch breaks, you come back to work. Now, you're bothered again by your coworkers and your colleagues that are asking you to do this and do that, and the client, God forbid the client calls you, God forbid the client wants something from you, you're upset at the client, you forgot that the client is the one that paid your rent and your mortgage and your car and everything else, you're completely ignoring all of the benefits that you're getting, you're just annoyed that people are asking you for stuff. It's like, this stupid guy and this guy and that guy, and you're upset at the whole world. Why? Because you don't want to be there, and guess what? You're not actually there. Your mind is not at work. You're looking forward to after work, when you could do a bunch of nonsense and simply waste your time and money and resources, which are actually being provided to you by the very same people you can't stand. Now, this is just simply what happened between the minute you woke up until about 4 or 5 o'clock. Should we continue the rest of the day? By the time you got home, you're upset at whoever is home, you're upset at whoever is not home, as if they're all like your servants. You watch something, whether it's on a screen of a television or a screen of a computer, and you're upset at what they're saying, as if they're obligated to say what you like and what you don't like. And in so many words, a person builds themselves a certain type of mentality where they feel like the world is supposed to bow to their commands and fulfill every single one of their needs. But yet when you ask them, are you a good person? Yeah, of course, I don't kill nobody. Well, you may not kill anybody, but quite frankly, there's probably a few people that want to kill you with that kind of attitude. You see, a lowlife is not somebody that just cut you off. A lowlife can somebody be a person that's completely oblivious to the benefits they're getting from the world around them. The benefits they're getting from their spouse, from their children, from their job, from the gifts that HaShem gives them non-stop, whether it's be their air in their lungs and the vision they see, or the car that they have, even if it broke down on the way to work, and the job that they have, and the boss that can't stand them, and the boss that does like them, and the co-workers, and the clients, and all of those different gifts. A lowlife is a person that's completely oblivious of all of that. And in fact, a lowlife, says the Chazon Ish, is not something that is substantial and positive, meaning that it's not something tangible, it's not something that you can buy, it's not even something you need to train for. When was the last time somebody gave a course of, let's give a course of how to be angry? Well, I don't need a course of how to be angry. I get angry naturally. Oh, let's give a course of how to be stingy. The guy says, well, I don't need to get a course for being stingy, because the last time the wife or the kids or somebody at work or the client asked for anything, I immediately said no before they even completed the sentence. Meaning, you're naturally stingy. You're naturally angry. No one had to teach you. No one had to teach you to be arrogant. No one had to teach you to be materialistic. There is no such course that teaches anyone in society of how to be a materialistic person. A person is simply born that way. No one has to teach you how to be a lustful person and just simply want more than what you have. You don't see kindergarten classes teaching people how to be lustful, how to desire more than what you have. Why? They're born that way. People are born naturally with bad traits, with low-life traits. That's what the Chazon Ish is saying here. This low-life is not something substantial and positive, but rather a lack, an emptiness, a lack of refinement of the soul. You don't need anyone to teach you to be a low-life. All you need to do is simply nothing to develop your character. Where if a person does not help themselves become a better person, by definition, that makes them a lowlife. Why? Because all you have without character development is lowlife traits that you were born with. You were born lustful, wanting more than what you have. You're never happy with what you have. You were born stingy. Some people are less stingy than others. Some people are only stingy about certain things. He may not be stingy about money, but he's stingy about his possessions. He may not be stingy about his possessions, but he's stingy about his food. He may not be stingy about his food, but he's a little bit too generous with other people's property. Let's just say that. He's not stingy with anything because everything he has is stolen. You see, a person that does not develop their character simply leaves themselves in a natural state that they were born with, which are only bad traits. So although we would all like to believe that the general society and the world at large is mostly good, I dare anyone to find that. How? We do good things. Certainly there are many people that do good things, but that doesn't make them good. It just means they did good things. Yes, he developed a company that brings boxes with all of the goods that people desire in their heart to people, and sure, he built a fantastic business. But he cheated on his wife, he lied to his employees, he embarrasses them in public. He's good at building the business, but that doesn't make him a good person. And then you look at another person. Oh, and he beat every company and he beat every team and he won every championship. And sure, that makes him a very good competitor. But he also cheated the same team or company he worked for. And he lied to all of his teammates and colleagues. And he's angry anytime somebody disagrees with him to the point where people become scared. So yes, he's a good competitor, but he's not a good person. And you see, when a person does not develop their character traits in order to remove the anger from their heart, to remove the stinginess, to remove the arrogance, to remove the lust for more than what you have, remove the addiction to more, that means that they are leaving themselves in the low state that they were created, i.e., low life. So whether this low life cut you off or not, didn't make him a low life. That's just simply one of the things that people do when they are a low life. And in fact, if a person that is calling others lowlives doesn't look into the mirror and fix the person that they see when they look in the mirror, then they perhaps are in a worse state of lowlifeness than the people that they're staring at. The Chazon Ish is telling us here that you don't need any training or teachings to be a lowlife, to be angry, to be materialistic or arrogant, to be a liar. Perhaps you need some training to be a lawyer, and that lying aspect of you will help you because that's generally what lawyers are very good at. And perhaps being creative is good in certain things, including good and bad things. But you have to understand that if you don't develop yourself to becoming better, you're leaving yourself in the state that you were created, which is a low life state. Now, the Chazon Ish is now going to tell us how to fix all of this. How do I remove this low life state that I was created in? How do I stop being this? And he says, its sure cure is the labor of Torah, as the light of Torah brings a person back to life. Here, of course, we're hearing the obvious answer, but if a person hasn't learned Torah their whole life, they're clueless. And how does learning a book about Moses and Abraham, and how does that going to fix me? Well, that's because you may not realize the Torah is wider than the ocean. It's not just the 5 books of Moses. It's not even just the 24 books, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, the writings, the prophets. No, there's more. There's the oral Torah. And the oral Torah that's comprised of the Mishnah, the Gemara, the MUSSAR, the Shulchan Aruch, the Zohar, the Poskim, all of the different halachot, all of the different parts of Chassidut. The Torah is wider than the ocean, and then different teachings are going to affect your neshama in different ways, your soul in different ways. And if a person makes Torah a priority in their life, instead of making materialism a priority in their life, instead of making their ego a priority in their life, then little by little, that's going to give them, number one, the realization that there are certain parts of their life that they have to remove, negative parts they have to remove, but also it's going to give them the desire to refine themselves, to become better. Now, The Chazon Ish says, not just to learn Torah, but the cure is to toil in Torah, to labor in Torah. As he says, in general, whoever feels lowliness of the spirit should work much on the study of Torah until he sharpens his brain and tires out his body. When he has acquired much Torah, the lowliness will melt away and he will be cured. Then he can go and study the books of MUSSAR, the moral teachings, and ascend to even higher heights of wisdom. See, here the Chazon Ish is giving us a map, direction, if you will. Now, if a person follows these directions, they're assured to succeed. Not just to succeed and eventually get to heaven, but succeed in actually having a life worth living. A life where it's full of wisdom, it's full of good, it's full of success, it's full of happiness, it's full of answers. Not like the Christian missionaries out there that the only thing that they know is what their priest or pastor has told them. Tell the Jewish people and anybody else that's willing to listen to you, and even if they're not willing to listen to you, Isaiah 53 and Daniel 9. That's the only thing they know. There's an entire world of Torah. The only thing that they know is a couple of verses and a couple of parts of the Torah. Why? Because they've become robots. They've become simply like machines. They don't think for themselves anymore. Hence the reason why the problems that existed yesterday in Christianity are the same problems as exist today, and in fact they're just getting worse. The problems in Catholicism that existed yesterday, the same problems that exist tomorrow. Those problems don't go away. The people don't grow. Even the leaders among them simply don't grow. Why? Because they don't teach you to think. They teach you to follow. In Judaism, we are obligated to think. And the beautiful part about Judaism is that there's not one particular subject or matter that is everything. Meaning, you cannot make Judaism turn into just one part. You can't just talk, oh, Messiah is the biggest thing. It's not. Shabbat is the biggest thing. It's not. Wasting seed is the biggest thing. It's not. Marriage is the biggest thing. It's not. Why? They're all parts of the Holy Torah. And when a person takes all of these parts of the Torah and adds on top of them the spiritual and physical development of a person in their servitude of HaShem, that can make a person whole. That can make a person a priceless person in the world. But when a person simply turns themselves or allows other people to turn them into robots, you cannot expect them to grow. So that means that this person can go to a church or even to a synagogue or to wherever he's going for 20, 30 years, but still stay the same animal that he was. She still stays the same animal that she was. She walks around, even though she's 40 and 50 years old and 60 years old, and she walks around as if she was just born, with no modesty whatsoever and no acknowledgement that modesty is even necessary. She has no concept whatsoever that modesty is even a good benefit to her. She thinks that if she walks around with less clothes, that makes her look better. She doesn't realize she actually looks worse, that perhaps somebody is lying to her and telling her that this looks good, but the reality is that it's quite the opposite. Now, when a person only feels that they're supposed to follow what is requested of them by society, and they've become a robot, they've become a sheep, they're not going to think for themselves. They're not going to do anything to develop themselves. Because why? They're constantly trying to please the public. They're constantly trying to please the world around them instead of the creator that created them. So the Chazon Ish is telling us this low life state of being is not something that you acquire as a result of a certain action, but rather it's something that a person is born with and stays with as a result of inaction, as a result of not doing anything about it. He is born not wanting to share. He's born stingy. He is born angry. He's born arrogant and lustful and wanting more. He's born that way. And Chazon Ish says, if you want to remove that from your heart, you want to remove that constant desire to have more, that constant yearning to have more, which is simply going to make you sick. And that's part of the reason that people get cancer, because literally their body wants more, their mind wants more, and therefore their innards start desiring more, and one of the cells wants more space. So he simply just occupies more space, even though that means he's starting to kill everybody around him. People act like a cancer cell and they develop cancer, which is something that's unhappy with what they have, wants more. Chazon Ish says, if you want to remove that, you have to first identify that it's bad. 2, start working on refining yourself and realize that there's more to life than just acquiring more. There's more to life than just simply getting your way. The way to do that is by learning more Torah and starting to apply what you learn to your life. As a person sharpens their brain by learning the subjects at hand, whether it's the weekly parasha, or it's halacha, or it's gemara, or it's MUSSAR, whatever the subject is, a person is going to sharpen their brain. If they're studying it superficially, like you study things for college and for grad school and for high school just to pass some type of test, you're not going to get very far that way. Why? Because, again, it may be intellectually stimulating, interesting, but it's not going to get a person to perfect themselves. Why? Because in order to perfect yourself, a person has to really delve into the books, push themselves as much as they can, to learn as much as they can, to the point where it actually affects their body. Meaning, you're tired, push yourself an extra 5 minutes. You are hungry? Okay, wait 5 minutes, learn a little bit more. You want to go somewhere? Wait 5 minutes, learn a little more. Meaning you have to push yourself a little bit more than what your natural inclination wants to do. And after a person has acquired much Torah and learns different subjects, little by little, that loneliness will melt away. Why is the loneliness going to melt away? Because the more purity you bring from the Torah to your life, because you are learning and applying what you're learning to your life, the more you're not only recognizing the bad, but the more you start desiring the good. You start desiring the refinement. What is this like in real life? Rav Ephraim says just today, he went to pray at a place that he hasn't prayed for before. And as is common in different Jewish communities around the world, especially common in Eretz Yisrael, there's always somebody either giving or selling books outside of the shuls. And after he prays, he's, on his way out, he sees there's 2 Torah scholars, 2 avrechim, next to this table where somebody's selling the books. And one avrech, these guys are older guys, they're both, in their 40s or 50s. They've been learning Torah their whole life. This is a very, not just a religious community, but, many of the men over there are Torah scholars. And so Torah is nothing new to them. And he hears the conversations as he's folding his tefillin, and, he hears the conversation. And one avrech says to the other, so did you get the book? I see you're getting it? He says, you know what? It looks delicious to me. I had to get it. So now, if you hear something like that from the outside, that a book looks delicious to you, the first thing you think about, oh, you know what? It's probably a cookbook. It's probably a book that, they're talking about how to make good food. Probably a book that, maybe it's not a book that it's always to cook food. Perhaps it's a book of how to find certain ingredients. So Ephraim looks over and he sees, what kind of book? What is this book that's delicious? That's really enticing him, that he had to get it. So much so that he already starts to, He can't handle it. He already starts reading it in the middle of the street. He can't hold himself. He has to start reading it now. What is this enticing, delicious book? What's the title of it? And of course, there's more than one book, so he saw. What's this book? The book was called, in Hebrew, How to Serve God Better. That's the book. The book that was delicious, the book that was enticing, the book that was simply so enticing, so amazing, that he couldn't help himself, that he had to buy it and even start reading it right away in the middle of the street. You couldn't wait. Now, if you go to the middle of New York, go to, I don't know, Broadway over there, or you go to the middle of Tel Aviv, or you go to the middle of, I don't know, Los Angeles, you go to the middle of Houston, you go to the middle of Oklahoma, or wherever you go in the world, and you tell people, hey, I got a sign. You have a sign in your head. You say, listen, who wants a delicious book? Now, people are going to say, sure, what's it about? What kind of cooking? What kind of food are you? What are you, can you eat the book? I tell them, yeah, it's a delicious book called How to Serve God Better. How many people are going to look at you and say, yeah, that is delicious. Let me get two of them. One for me, one for my wife. Probably not many. Do you know why? Because from their perspective, delicious, enticing, is only something physical, material, lowly. Something that's here today and gone tomorrow. The last thing on their mind when they think delicious, when they think enticing, is to serve God better. Why? Because they are still at or very close to the very natural state that they were created in. They haven't elevated themselves to even think in such a fashion that to serve God better is enticing, is amazing. Because to them, everything that's amazing and pleasurable about this world must be physical, must be something you can eat, touch, feel, consume in some way, see in some way. So when you tell them delicious and enticing is instructions, teachings, processes of how to serve God better, they're confused. What does one thing have to do with the other? Now, there was a guy that said a story in the name of a rabbi. I don't know who he is, but he's a Talmid Chacham. His name was Rabbi Yigal Brown. Rabbi Yigal Brown, he, after studying Torah for many years, he decided to go and work as a Mashgiach over the kashrut of food at the Shabak. The Shabak is the Israeli special, secret forces, you could call it. Special forces, secret forces, similar to, let's say, the FBI or CIA in America, or, I don't know, other countries have their own. So the Shabak, also called Shin Bet, even though they do a lot of interesting things, they're not exactly a religious organization, but they have some religious people among them that want to eat kosher food. So they have to have a Mashgiach, they have to have a rabbi supervising that the food is kosher. Not only the food is kosher, the tools that are being used are kosher, which is more difficult when they're with certain departments. For example, if somebody is in a works, let's say for the Navy, it's very difficult, nearly impossible, for a person to maintain kashrut if they don't prepare ahead, and sometimes at all, just simply because if you're in a submarine, those submarines will sometimes go under the ocean for months at a time, and it's very difficult to have everybody, have only one oven to stay kosher and not kosher. Long story short, that's why you always have to have a rabbi to supervise these things. So this Torah scholar, Rabbi Eagle Brown, he went and wanted to sign up for a job at the Shabak. Now, of course, being that it's a secret forces, special forces, the job application is not like a job application if you were to apply for it in a regular restaurant. There's a lot of background checks. They count every single thing that you've ever done, how many teeth you have, how many fingernails you have, where you were, what you said, what you wear, your friends, in order to make sure that you're not a terrorist, you're not a spy, you're not committing treason, like unfortunately people are being caught for today to, betraying their own countries. There's unfortunately a lot of lowlives out there that are willing to sell their home country, their family, their friends for a little bit of money, a little bit of honor. So one of the things that these special forces do across the board, not just in Israel, is to do very, very serious background checks. So this Rav Eagle Brown, even though he's not going to be in the special forces, all he's going to do is supervise that the food there is kosher. He still has to get the same type of background check because there's no way that they can avoid speaking about, certain subjects that are not for the general public. So they need to know if he can keep a secret, if he's a big, if he's a problem, if he's a traitor, and so on. So after going through a whole process, he gets to the final stage. And he's in front of one of the people in charge, and he starts interviewing him in order to see where he's at, what he said. And after interviewing and talking to him for a while, he says, let me ask you something. Where did you learn? And the rabbi says, I learned in yeshiva over here for 14 years. And then after I finished yeshiva, I got married. I learned in the Toil for 15 years. So this secular soldier or sergeant says to him, listen, off topic. You don't have to answer this. I'm just interested for me. It doesn't have anything to do with the interview. I just want to know, what'd you get out of it? 29 years you learned Torah. Did you get a job? No. Did you get any things on your shoulders? No. Here, if you're 29 years in the army, you're 29 years in the Shabak, 29 years in anywhere, you at least get a raise, a promotion, a certain position of honor. You learned 29 years and, you're here, you're applying for a job that you probably could have taken a course for 3 months and gotten the job. What'd you get out of it? So Rav Eagle Brown, who's Yireh Shamayim, prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him the right words, and the right words came out. And he says to this soldier, this person in command, even though he's Jewish and Israeli, unfortunately, clueless about Torah, he says to him, have you ever heard of a Rav named Rav Shach, Rav Elazar Shach? And at that time, this was after a very famous speech that a Rav Shach gave against the secularism that was happening in Israel at the time at the kibbutzim. And he berated all of these kibbutzim that were feeding the people rabbits and pigs and had forgotten where they came from, their lineage, their heritage. It was a very famous speech. Caused a lot of commotion. And unfortunately, the people from the secular world, that's what they knew Rav Shach about. They didn't know that he's the head of the Torah world, one of the Gedolei Ador, one of the giants, wrote serious, Torah books in his life, led a yeshiva with thousands and thousands of people. They had no clue. All they knew, he's that old rabbi, 107-year-old rabbi, that gave a speech about people eating rabbits and pigs. So, he's like, I heard about him. He's the one that said that speech. He's like, well, he did a little bit more than that speech. Well, let me tell you a story about Rav Shach, he says. He says, some time ago, Rav Shach went to pray in a different community where people didn't know him. And he got to the synagogue early. So, of course, he just picked a chair in the back, got one of the Sfarim, one of the books, and started learning. Till people come and, they prays with them and leaves. And he's learning and learning and learning. And as the synagogue fills up, there's many, many people, all of a sudden, this really angry guy shows up to the shul. He's one of the members of the shul, longtime members of the shul, and it looks like this guy got hit with the angry tree today. As if everything in his life went wrong today. Not just one thing, not just two things, literally everything in this guy's life went wrong. Why? Because as soon as he got to his chair, he saw this old man sitting in his chair. And without warning, without asking him to move or anything, he literally just started screaming and yelling and insulting Rav Shach. You thief! You fool! What are you sitting in my chair? How dare you? What are you doing? Ta, ta! And he's yelling at him at the top of his lungs. How dare he sit in his chair? Now, Rav Shach, he's studying Torah. He has no idea whether this guy is yelling at him or he's yelling at somebody else. So, since he doesn't know, he continues learning. The guy sees that the old man is not moving. He starts yelling even more, and the place is full of people. Everyone's watching. No one knows what is happening here. Everybody's scared to death to even go next to this guy with all the yelling and screaming. They're not sure who the old man is that's getting berated the way it is and ignoring it. But this is literally a sight to be seen. And he's screaming and yelling, and it's getting louder. At this point, Rav Shach says, okay, so he thinks to himself, he must be yelling at me then. He looks up and he sees the guys yelling at him. Immediately, Rav Shach gets up. He goes, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Never to make you angry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he starts hugging and kissing the guy. The same guy that's cursing him out, that's yelling at him, that's berating him, embarrassing him in front of everybody. He starts hugging the guy and starts kissing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I would never make you angry. Chas v'shalom. God forbid I would never make you angry. You think I would make you angry? I would never make you angry. You think I did this on purpose? I didn't know. I'm so sorry. He starts apologizing to him endlessly, and he starts hugging him. He goes, I'm leaving. Don't worry. Right now I'm leaving. Look, I'm leaving. And he starts walking away as he's hugging him, and people are just baffled. Wait, did this just happen? Now, Rav Eagle Brown, that's telling this story to this sergeant, he says, let me ask you something. What would you have done if you were in a position of Rav Shach and the guy's yelling at you and screaming at you? Would you hug him and kiss him and say, I'm sorry? He says, no chance. He goes, what would you do? He says, most likely I'd hit him. And if I was in a good mood, I'd tell him either be quiet or I'm not going to move at all. He says, is there any chance that during this Gilgul, during this lifetime, you would ever act like Rav Shach and apologize after this whole thing and kiss the guy and hug the guy? And he says, no chance. Rav Brown says to him, he says, you see, that's what I learned for 29 years. That I can't learn anywhere else. You see, Rabotai Karim, a person thinks that he goes to a yeshiva, he goes to a kollel, he goes to his study, he goes to his room and he opens a book and he thinks that he's learning the words that are there. He thinks that he's learning the stories that are there, the stories of yesteryear, the things that happened thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, and he thinks that's what he's learning. Meanwhile, what he's not realizing is that if he takes those stories to heart, those stories will shape his life in such a way that's beyond his imagination into making him a precious person. Not because he was inside the story of 3,000 years ago. And not because he understands and likes the story of 300 years ago, but rather because he will learn different lessons that will help him desire to become better, to become more refined, to stop being a lowlife. When a person thinks of the world that we live in from the perspective of regular general public people, he can't help himself but be in the same low-life state as them, because that's the world around you. People desire stuff. They want more stuff. Whatever they have, they want more. If they have a lot, they want even more than a lot. And they live their life in such a fashion that there's no time to become a better person. There's no time to even think that you can become better. The only thing you have time for is to accumulate more stuff that will eventually become the property of others. So, when a person learns Torah, although they still need to eat and drink and live and have a house and all those other things, that's never their priority. That's never their purpose. Because all of those things that life requires, whether it's eating and drinking and getting married and having children and having a house and paying the bills and all of those things, they're simply parts of life that you do in order to allow yourself to develop your character. And the way you practice your character development is through those parts. On the other hand, if a person doesn't have Torah, then those parts become the whole, become the purpose, become everything, leaving a person no purpose, no point, and no time to fix themselves. So they can walk into a place that's full of, let's say, people from Asia that require you to take off your shoes. And they'll say, okay, so since everybody here is taking off their shoes, I'll take off my shoes too. Are you taking off your shoes because this place is holy to you? No. Are you taking off your shoes because you don't want to dirty the floor? No. Why are you taking off your shoes? I'm taking off my shoes because everybody else is taking off the shoes. So, when you went to a religious community, did you wear modest clothes because everybody there is modest? No. Why not? How come you can't act the same way in a religious community or in a religious house as you do in the Asian house? They won't be able to answer that. Do you know why? Because in one place, their lack of spirituality is making them focus on trying to fit in, to look like everybody else, to look like the people from Asia, from Tibet, from different parts of the world that take off their shoes, to look like the people from the mosque that are taking off their shoes. They want to look like a bunch of people that have nothing to do with them. But when they come to their own household, they come to their own family, they come to their own neighborhood, they don't want to look like them. In fact, they want to stand out. So you'll see many times some of the most provocative, some of the most immodest behaviors are actually happening in our own backyards by our own people. Not because they have developed themselves to a point where they realize and that this is better, but the opposite. They stopped developing themselves. They stopped caring about developing themselves and have simply decided that they're just good enough. And their low-life traits are accentuated in the worst places. Now, if you look at some of the Chachamim and how they live their life, some of the sages, some of the Torah scholars, some of the average people and how they live their life, you start realizing, wait a minute, there's a significant difference between us. Even though he eats and he eats, he drinks and he drinks, he has kids and he has kids, he has a house and he has a house. They're both alive. They both do all the things that you do in life. The behavior of the two people are a world apart. Why is there such a difference? The only thing that causes that difference is the Torah. One has an instruction set for life. The other one is simply living life and trying to figure out what to do along the way. One of the examples that I try to tell people that is perhaps the best reason for a person to improve themselves as soon as possible is kids. You see, when a person is young and single, or just newly married, they don't really realize how much they need God. They don't really realize how much they're going to cry to God if they don't make the right decisions when they're young. And the reason why is because when a person is young, they're strong, they feel like they could conquer the world, they could do a lot of things. And they don't realize that as time goes by, there's more responsibilities, and one day you're going to have children. Now, those children are not going to think what you think. Naturally, you're going to teach them certain things. Now, if that child grows up in a house where he comes home from school and he sees his parents watching sports and movies, then that child is going to watch sports and movies. Even if you send him to the best yeshiva, the best school, if he sees his parents do something, he's going to want to do something. And as the child grows up, he'll actually become worse and worse. Whatever low traits, whatever weaknesses the parents have, the children are typically worse. And what ends up happening is that as those parents grow up and the things they did when they were younger become unacceptable to them, become no longer of an interest to them, they start realizing that their kids are becoming interested in the very same things that they don't want them to do anymore because they've already passed that test or they already finished that desire and they know it's wrong. But now they don't have anything to do about it. So what ends up happening is that the lack of respect that they gave their parents is what they end up getting from their kids. The lack of gratitude that they expressed in the world is what they get from their kids, and even worse. The lack of honesty that they expressed in life is what they get from their kids. Meaning all of the bad things that they used to do become even worse in their kids. And now to fix that is not a simple thing. When a person lives a life full of Torah, they don't just have the respect of their kids when they're young, the discipline and love of their kids when they're young, but in fact they get it for life. One of the best examples is a story that I saw from Rabbi Ephraim's book called Succah Shvuit, the weekly conversation. And in Parashat Bechukotai, he brings a story that was verified by multiple Rabbanim. It's a true story about Rav Kanievsky. Rav Kanievsky, alav shalom, he had an extraordinary amount of respect for his parents, of course, not just because it was his parents, but also because his father was one of the Gdolei Ador, the Steipler Gaon. And there are many stories between them of how the Steipler literally cried, floods of tears to have such a righteous son, a son that's going to learn Torah just like he did. One day, after Rav Kanievsky is already older, he's built a family, he's already well known around the world as one of the Gdolim. He's not a little kid anymore. He's already 50, 60 years old. The Steipler is already in his later age. And the mother of Rav Kanievsky, the wife of the Steipler, says to the Steipler, Chaimke, poor Chaimke, he has a backache. I really feel bad. Now, the Steipler immediately hears it, stops what he's doing, takes some oil, baby oil, and leaves the house. He goes to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, his son's house, knocks on the door, comes in, goes into the study where his son is in, sees that Rav Chaim is studying Torah. He says, okay, lay down on the couch, take off your shirt, I'm going to give you a massage. Rav Chaim, without saying a single word, without anything, takes off his shirt, lays on the couch, and allows his father to give him a back massage. After he gives him the massage, his father, the stipler, says to him, okay, you have to continue, cover yourself, stay laying down until tomorrow. Don't move here till tomorrow. You need to rest. Rav Chaim agrees, thank you, and the stipler leaves. Finally, he gets home, and the Rabbanit, the wife, says, oh, where have you been? He goes, oh, I did your will. She says, what do you mean? Because I went and I gave Chaimke a massage. She goes, huh? What do you mean you went to the What are you talking about? He said, you said that Chaimke, our son, hurt his back. So I went to give him a massage. The Rabbanit starts laughing. She goes, no, not Chaimke, our son. The grandson, the little kid. He hurt himself. So, not our son. Now, what do we see from here? Rav Kanievsky, 56 years old, his father, the old man, comes to his house, says, come on, take off your shirt, I need to give you a massage. Why? Your back hurts. Doesn't disagree, doesn't dispute, doesn't argue, nothing. My father came to give me a massage, okay, there must be a good reason for it. My father tells me, lay down on the couch until tomorrow, there must be a good reason for it. No debate, no discussion, no nothing. So what happens now? The stipler Gaon immediately leaves the house. She says, where are you going now? She says, I have to go back to Chaimke. Why? I have to tell him, I know my son. I told him not to get up out of that couch. He's not going to get out of that couch until tomorrow. That's bitul Torah, that's wasting time. He has to get out of that couch to go back to learning Torah. He goes back to his house and he tells him, listen, you can go back to studying. That's honoring parents, Abutai. That is honoring parents. If a person has developed himself to become a precious diamond that he can become, they can also have children that are just like that. Now, what is a person going to tell you? A person is going to tell you, listen, there are all types of troubles in the world. There are all things that entice me. There are all things that are... Listen. All of the things that are happening in your life, they're not happening for no reason. HaShem is going to send you tests. HaShem is going to send you different hurdles. HaShem is going to send you different opportunities to test out what you've learned and put it into practice. If you view those tests that Hashem gives you as something where He's punishing you or as something that's too much for you, then you're never going to know whether you've developed yourself and whether you've grown or whether you're the same animal that you started as. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit has a story about one of the great sages, Rabbi Chanina Ben Dosa. Rabbi Chanina Ben Dosa was one of the great sages to such a point that there was a bat kol, a heavenly voice that came out of the sky that said, the entire world has the merit to eat because of the righteousness of Rabbi Chanina. And Rabbi Chanina is happy eating the carobs that he's eating. This plant that if you eat it, pretty much you're going to break your teeth. That's how hard it is to eat. But he's happy with the little bit that he has. So this Rabbi Chanina, there's a whole section of Masechet Ta'anit, Tractate of Ta'anit, talks about different stories of Rabbi Chanina. And one of the extraordinary stories my children love, and ones that I've heard many times, and every time you say it, every time you hear it, you learn something new. Rabbi Chanina was studying Torah one day. But there was commotion. Commotion in the streets. Commotion outside. Everyone was scared. Everyone was crying. Why? Why is everybody crying? Because there was an animal that was called an arvad. This arvad is not a normal animal that we have in the world today. It's an animal that has some spiritual parts of it, mystical parts of it. that are not found today, where whoever this animal bit, wouldn't die instantly. Rather, once this animal bit the person, it would run to a body of water. If it got to the body of water, before the person got to the body of water, the person would die on the spot. Now, of course, this is not something that is just purely a physical thing. There's something mystical about it. But these animals were very dangerous, and people were dying. People would walk by, this arvad would bite them before the person even realizes what should he do, what just happened here. Ow, it hurt him. By the time he realized this, the arvad already got to the bottom of the river, went into the water, the person's already dead. So this arvad caused a big commotion. Why? No one knew what to do with it. It was killing people left and right. To such an extent that the commotion got to the Bet Midrash where Rabbi Chanina was learning. Rabbi Chanina heard the commotion and saw that people were at the entrance. And he said to them, "What can I do to help you? What's happening?" And he said, "Kvod Rab, we're sorry to bother you, but there is a life risk among us." And they tell him about this arvad, who looked like a mix of a snake and some type of huge lizard, like a dragon type of lizard. There's a lizard, big lizard called a dragon. Not the ones in the movies. The ones that actually are alive today. And they're mostly, I believe, in Australia. Anyway, they tell Kvod Rav, this arvad is here and people are dying and we need help. Rabbi Chanina immediately gets up and he says, "Show me where it is." And the people are scared. Like, he's over there. Where over there? Over there. So Rabbi Chanina walks. No fear in the world. No concern. He walks exactly to where the arvad is. He sees that's where the whole of the arvad is. The whole town is there now. Everybody's scared to death. Now, they're scared that Rabbi Chanina is going to die. They're a big rabbi. They're sage. The entire generation sage. But he's walking there with no concern whatsoever. Looks for the arvad, finds the hole, and sticks his leg inside the hole, waiting for the arvad to bite him. The arvad bites him and immediately comes out of the hole. Starts running to the river, and halfway down the hill, the arvad collapses and dies. Chachamim say, how could it be? The arvad is on the way to the river. Wasn't the rule that if he gets to the river first, before the person he dies, the person dies? Yes, that's the rule. The rule didn't change. It's just that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved Rabbi Chanina so much that he had such emunah in him that he knew exactly who is the one that causes death, and it's not the arvad. That as soon as the arvad bit him and started running away, HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened up the ground from under Rabbi Chanina and water came out. And as soon as water touched Rabbi Chanina, the arvad died. Rabbi Chanina took the arvad, put him over his shoulder and started going from synagogue to synagogue, to the entire Jewish community, publicly announcing to everybody, it's not the arvad that dies, it's the sin. It's not the arvad that kills, it's the sin that kills. Meaning, this arvad is one of the messengers that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends to the world. He's one of the tests. He's one of the tools that HaShem has in this world. If you are focused only on the things around it, you're going to miss the whole point. If you think about the arvad and how big he is and how fast he is and all the fear that everybody else has from it, you're going to miss the whole point. You're going to miss the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's sending him. And he's only sending him because he's trying to get you to do tshuva. When you get closer to Hashem, when you find a way to serve Hashem even better, the arod loses all of its power. The arod loses its purpose. The arod has no reason to exist. So since Rabbi Chanina spent his entire life learning Torah and perfecting himself, he knew there's no reason for him to be concerned that some arod is going to kill him. Why? It's not the arod that kills, it's the sin that kills. And if I didn't make any sins, the arod has no power over me. If a person understands this message and applies it to their life, the guy that cut you off, the boss that took away the raise that you were supposed to get, the colleague that took away your position, the person that stole your money, the person that yelled at you, all of those different things that are happening in your life, those are all different tests, different tools that Hashem is sending you to test you out to see where you stand. Do you realize where you stand? And then you can know if the Torah that you've learned thus far is helping you or not. If you are overcoming those tests because you realize that it's not him that's cursing me, it's God that's sending him to curse me to see if I'll overreact. It's not him that's stealing from me, it's God testing me to see if I have faith in him, to know that if it's mine, Hashem will return it to me. It's not her that's lying to me, it's Hashem simply seeing whether I believe in people and in their word, or I believe in God and his word. All of these things around us are simply tools that Hashem sends us to see where we stand. If we are low lives, we will simply miss the entire message. And we will stay low lives and we will not know what's the purpose of all of these things. It'll simply be a life full of suffering. Why? Because bad stuff happens to everybody. And you won't know why you have all this stuff. You're never going to get the point. You're just simply going to suffer like as if somebody's punching you left and right your whole life, because that's life. But if a person realizes all of these different punches, all of these different obstacles are simply messages for Hashem to see, where do you stand? Have you improved yourself? And thereby your reaction will change. When your reaction will change, the obstacle will change, your life will change, and your purpose will be achieved. And you will then know that the low-life aspect that you once had is cured. That, Rabotai, is the purpose of learning Torah. With that being said, I appreciate everybody learning with me. I welcome all of you back. We're going to continue teaching later this week on Tuesday night and Wednesday. Tuesday night we have the Jewish Intimacy series. Continuation of a life-changing series that I believe I've probably gotten more couples to message me about than anything else we've ever taught. In fact, there was one woman that sent me a message about a couple of weeks ago before the holiday, telling me that her life's perspective has changed as a result of the Jewish Intimacy series, especially because we brought up the topic of having children, but not just regular children, even children that are with special needs. And she thought that this special needs child was a form of punishment, until she watched that lecture and starts seeing things differently. So that lecture is coming up on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, we have our questions and answers, where it's called Stump the Rabbi. After saying some Divrei Torah for a little while, I'm going to take questions from the crowd, from TikTok, from Facebook, from other aspects of it. You guys get your questions prepared. BeEzrat Hashem will do our best to answer them. Siyat Dishmaya, Hashem will give us the answers for everything. Tonight's Shiur is a little shorter than usual just because it's the first one out, and I also want to make sure that everybody stays tuned in. I appreciate everybody learning with me. And BeEzrat Hashem will bless each and every single one of you. Anyone that wants to watch more lectures, more things that we have, can go to the YouTube page, or can go to our website, bhtorah.org or beezrathashem.org, if you know how to spell the whole thing. Or you can just go bhtorah.org or YouTube, Just type in my name, Yaron Reuven. You'll see there are thousands of lectures over there. There's also in Hebrew, in Russian, in German, French, Baruch Hashem. I think there's about 10 or 11 different languages lectures. So anyone that wants to learn Torah, the Torah is available to them. All of this and much more, BeEzrat Hashem, is available for free for anyone that wants to be a part of it. Enjoy the Torah, learn the Torah, apply the Torah, and don't forget, the whole purpose of all of it is for you to be holy. Call to B'cha v'atzlacha.